Hello and welcome to the first episode of Byte-Sized Mobile Dev Tips. I'm Tommy Baggett and I'm going to be sharing different things that I've run into on various mobile projects with you so that if you come across them, you'll be able to take care of them more quickly and easily. Today we're looking at something that anyone using Xamarin.Forms would find pretty helpful. Typically in Xamarin.Forms you create a view model that implements an interface called PropertyChanged and then work with that interface implementation in every one of your properties in the view model. There's a lot of repeated boilerplate code in the use of this, and so today we're going to look at a plugin that takes all of that boilerplate code and automatically generates it for you. We can go from a simple view model like this with just a couple of properties and 48 lines of code all the way down to this, where we still implement the interface, but our properties are now simple getter setters. So stick around, we're going to take a look at it, and I guarantee you it'll save you some time. Okay, we're going to start by creating a new Xamarin.Forms project in Visual Studio. I've already got my location set. I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. We'll just create one for Android, although of course this would work the same for iOS and Windows UWP. We'll just use the blank app, which is the Welcome to Xamarin.Forms starter app you've probably seen if you've created a Xamarin.Forms app before. We've already got our Android emulator started, so I'm going to just go ahead and try to fire it up here and see what we get with our starter app. It should start up in the Android emulator and we'll see the familiar Welcome to Xamarin.Forms text centered in the screen. And there it is. So we're going to stop this and we're going to take a look at the plugin that we're discussing today. I'm going to bring up my browser here. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Fody. Fody is described as an extensible tool for weaving .NET assemblies. What that means is that this tool allows you to create a plugin that can modify the .NET IL or intermediate language bytecode that's generated by the Roslyn compiler. And you can inspect the contents and make adjustments, additions, removals, whatever it is you're really trying to do. This is not for the lighthearted if you're trying to implement this by yourself from scratch. But what they've done for the Fody plugin is created an extensible architecture so that others could build on top of it and create new functionality like what we're going to take advantage of today. If we take a look at the list of the Fody weavers, as they are called, we're going to scroll down here. Here's the add-ins list. There are a number of them, quite a few that are worth you checking out. I'll put the link to this page along with the others we're taking a look at down in the description of the video. The one that we're interested in looking at is actually the PropertyChanged Fody plugin, and as you can guess, it takes care of what I described in the opening of this video, which is to inspect our code, find classes that implement the iNotifyPropertyChanged interface, and go ahead and populate those with the needed code if we didn't implement it ourselves. It is unobtrusive in that if we do have it implemented in some existing code, it won't implement a duplicate implementation or somehow cause the existing implementation to not work. So we're going to look down through here very quickly at the instructions. Basically, it's requiring a NuGet package to be installed into our project. We'll do that in just a minute. We create an XML file called Fody Weavers, and we add the PropertyChanged plug-in to that list of weavers, and from there we just work with it and no longer have to be concerned with implementing the often repeated code involved in implementing the iNotifyPropertyChanged interface. You can see some of the code I was showing in the opening is actually here in the documentation. So if you want to check that out, feel free to, because like I said, I'll put a link to this page in the description as well. So let's go back to the code now, and we're going to start changing this up. And starting with this, we're going to again use some of the sample code that we had. We're going to create a label that just says, let's see, what is the given names? Yes, given names. Given names. And we'll put an entry in that is going to be a binding to the view model that we create here in just a minute. And we're going to make that binding two-way, which if you're not familiar with it, just means that changes to either the data source or the entry edit field will cause the data to be sent back in the other direction. So if a change is detected in the view model, the entry field's content will be updated on screen, and if the user changes the on-screen content, that new data will be sent back to the data model property. Pretty standard Xamarin.Forms stuff, so we're going to just keep going here. I believe the next one was family name, so we'll put that in there. Another entry, and this one will be a binding to family name. And again, we're going to make it two-way so that either way where changes are detected, they'll be transferred back to the other location, the other direction. And then finally, we're going to add a field here, if I can get it right here, that says full name. And we're going to put another entry in, but we're going to disable this one. But what we're going to do a binding like we did with the others. And we'll bind to full name. And we won't have to do a two-way because this is just going to be a read-only thing. But what we will need to do is set in is enabled default. So basically this is going to create an edit field that is read-only. All right, so we're going to get our Solution Explorer open here. And keep in mind this is a demo project. I'm not following best practices here. Really need to organize code, but for right now I'm going to just create a view model class in the root here. And let's see, that's called main page, so I'm going to just name it main page view model. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make this class public, and I'm going to do what we always do, which is declare that it implements the iNavigation property. That's actually wrong. iNotify property changed. Not sure where that came from. And we'll add the using statement so it'll be recognized. I'm going to press Control period again to implement the interface. That's going to create our property changed event property, which is all it takes to implement the interface. So now we're ready to go. I'm going to do a couple of properties here, and like I said, it's given names, family name, and full name. So given names. Now I'm going to need a private backing field, so just going to type all this in as we go to keep it basic here. So we'll do our getter, which is just going to return our backing field, and then our customized setter. We're going to check and see if value is not equal to given names. On autopilot, almost typed null there. If it's not equal, if it's changed, then we need to assign it. So given names is equal to value, and we've got to do a little bit of work here, and then we'll need to add this handler for us. So we're going to do on property changed. I'm going to use a handy dandy thing here, which is caller member name. Kept wanting to call it calling member name. String property name equals null. I'm going to fix that in just a second here. So This attribute, if you're not familiar with it, we'll set it up to where wherever this method rather is called, it will automatically assign the name of the method it was called from to the property that we're specifying, in this case property name. So we're going to use our event that we declared, make sure it's not null, call its invoke method, ourselves as the sender, and then we're going to pass a new property changed event args, which expects the property name as its parameter. Put the closing semicolon and we're good there. So now that we've got that, we can actually call on property changed, and we don't have to put anything there, it'll figure it out for us, and we're done. So that's it for the given names. Then we can do the same for family name. And again, kind of the same thing. We're going to add our private string. That's the backing field. We return it anytime the getter is called. And for the setter, we're going to do pretty much what we just did for the given names property. And this is where that repeatable boilerplate code that I was talking about comes into play. So pretty much the exact same thing, calling on property changed again. And that's it for that. Now we also had the full name field, which is actually going to be a calculated field. And so we'll do this here just by saying given names space family name, and that should do it. Except if we tried this, we would have a problem, because you know, this full name is basically a get only property, and there's nothing to issue that property changed event when it gets updated. And it gets updated anytime the given names or family name properties change, because those are the elements used to construct it, to combine those two together. So what we need to do here is every time either given names is changed or the family name is changed, we need to also call on property change with the name of full name, so that will work for us. So we've got that set up. The only thing we haven't done yet, we need to go to the code behind for the XAML file, and we need to actually construct a new instance of our view model. Again, this is nowhere close to best practices. It's just a simple demonstration. We'll cover some various uses of MVVM frameworks like Prism, which is my personal favorite. There's some other great ones as well, MVVM Lite, MVVM Cross. It's all the same concept. Basically, you have a binding context property that you assign an instance of your view model to. A lot of times you're going to be using inversion of control and a dependency injection container. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point as well. But for this simple example, this is going to suffice. So looks like we've got what we want here. I'm going to cross my fingers and try to run it and hope everything compiles and works as expected. All right, looks correct. So let's try it here. I'm going to start typing my name. So if you notice, as I type my first and last name, it automatically populates the full name by appending those two together, just exactly what I expected. And if I type my middle name, a good old Southern name, Tommy Lee, we see now that still gets correctly updated in the full name field below. So that's what we're used to. That's how it works all the time. And this is where we were before when we looked at the example, although I guess I've got some few extra lines or something somewhere because I'm at 51 lines now. But Let's clean this up. Oh yes, okay, so I didn't delete the unused using statements that are put in there by default. That's what it was. So we're gonna just turn these into regular getter setters. I'm gonna press Control KC to comment that out. I'll do the same here for family name. And comment that out. KC again, Control KC. I'm gonna keep the event since that's required for the interface to be implemented. I'm not going to remove the interface, but I am going to comment out these others. I believe that'll work. So we're going to try it again. It should compile correctly, but when we run the app, we're going to see that our bindings are broken. We're going to be able to type stuff like we did before, but it's not going to have any effect. So typing Tommy, we can see I'm able to type that in, but there's nothing happening down here on full name. Likewise, if I type Baggett, again, nothing's happening. So if we set a breakpoint and examine the values of these properties in our view model, we'd see they're getting updated, but nothing's happening to fire the binding so that our calculated field gets updated, and then that change would then cause the update to be written to the screen. So clearly, even though we've got our iNotify_property_changed stuff in here, it's not working anymore with the stuff I commented out. So now we're going to go add the Fody PropertyChanged package. We're going to manage our NuGet packages. We're going to go to Browse, and we're going to type in Fody PropertyChanged, which I have already typed in. Here we are, propertychanged.fody. In this case, we only have to add it to our cross-platform code. There's not any need to have this one in our platform projects, so I'm going to just add it there. I'm going to click install, and it looks like it installed okay. I'm going to close this, and without making any other changes, I'm going to run the app again. Oh, I did forget something. So back in the past, this package would automatically add a size this down a little bit. It would automatically add the FodyWeavers.xml file that I mentioned that we need to add to the project. It no longer does that automatically, so we're going to add that ourselves now. Add a new item, go to data, pick an XML file. This file is expected to be called FodyWeavers.xml, and pretty simple format. I'll go back and remind you here quickly. Let's see, it's back up here. Okay, so yeah, so basically I'm going to just actually copy and paste this. All we have to do is add this in to our XML, and now we're going to try this again. Looks like it's built the cross-platform DLL. It's now building the Android project, so looks like at least code-wise we're good. We'll see if it once again functions as it did before we commented out the code. So bear with me here a second. It should start right up. All right, so it's launching now, and crossing my fingers is that as I type my name, yes, it is now appearing down below in the full name disabled entry field. Looks like we got a problem there. So given names worked, full name didn't work. Oops. Yes, I see why. It would help to make that not read-only. So let's try it again here. All right, we're going to fire it up again here, and that was the only code change I had to make because I had made a typo earlier, and now we see it does work again as it did before. However, our code doesn't have the boilerplate implemented anymore, and in fact, just to prove the point, I'm going to get it back to what we saw in the intro, and that is deleting all these comments. So we've reduced approximately 50 lines of code down to 15. Actually, we could even reduce it a little more, down to 14 lines of code. And I'm going to run it one more time just to show that this does in fact work. And again, we type in both fields, and yes, great, it works just as expected, but it's doing that repetitive work for us instead of us having to do it. So with that completed, we've wrapped up the first episode of Byte-Sized Mobile Dev Tips. Don't forget to like, share, or subscribe if this episode was helpful to you. Visit these sites to learn more about the Fody extensible framework and the PropertyChanged add-in, or reach out to me through my site, LinkedIn, or Twitter accounts with questions or opportunities to work together. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy coding!